right, and we are live here, Mr. Paisley, college football playoff semifinal week coming up. We got two big games. I think each of us will agree one game's a little bit bigger than the other for us. But with that being said, quarterfinals in the books. Recap that, and it's been a heck of a season, Mr. Paisley, and here we are down to 4, and we still have both of our teams involved.
Yeah, down to the Final Four. This is very exciting. We're not used to being in this position usually in our lifetime, so it's fun to have both teams and now going up against each other. A lot of our fans are looking forward to this one with a lot of fan bases here in Pennsylvania, a lot of Penn State fans and a couple Notre Dame fans. So it should be a fun game, fun to talk about. I'm really excited to get to that game. We'll save that for last for everybody. Really build it up to that. But, it's been a fun season so far. I think we got the right 4 teams, though, Case, I would say. And it may be Oregon maybe was more deserving, but these are some elite teams up here in the Final Four. Should create for some nice matchups here.
Right, exactly. We have the new playoff format. Oregon, had their chance against Ohio State. They got their doors blown off in the rematch there in the Rose Bowl, and we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, certainly it's been fun. 4 teams left, and still got 3 more total games. I guess with that being said, we could jump right into the quarterfinals. Penn State, Boise State, Texas, Arizona State, Ohio State, Oregon, and then Notre Dame, Georgia. May as well start New Year's Eve. Penn State getting it done against Boise. It was kind of a weird game. I think a couple times Penn State had a chance to put them away in this game. Offense started out really hot in the first quarter. It looked like it was going to be a blowout, or it's not kind of how like SMU was and go up 21, 28, nothing. And then their offense slowed down in the third quarter, a couple, strange plays. They didn't get a 4th down. Boise was hanging in there. And then a couple late turnovers by the defense helped close it out. It's kind of been the story for Penn State's playoff run is their defense has been playing really well. And same with the run game also. But yeah, definitely Boise played pretty tough, had a couple chances. Penn State did end up covering in the game. It didn't really feel like it until kind of late mid-late fourth quarter when they were able to pull away just a little bit. But yeah, major headline with Jeanty not doing a lot. His season low, I think it was like 3 yards a carry only, just over 100 yards on like 30 attempts. So Penn State did a real good job handling him. And honestly, I just don't think Boise really had any other strong game plan. Their quarterback actually was able to make some plays, move the ball a little bit. I think he had, it was like 300 yards passing total. So they were able to get that going, but Jeanty was their, bread and butter, and they just weren't able to get him going. And ultimately Boise just ended up stalling out. But yeah, interesting game. Penn State gets it done and got a big win. And, regardless who they play, it's a playoff win. And, here they are advancing to the semifinals.
Yeah, I think weird game is a good way to describe this game. And I would say 2 others besides the Ohio State, Oregon, that you said was just a bloodbath. So I think some of these playoff games, you're facing good teams. It's not going to be your best football. Maybe it's going to be a little scrappy, a little, not your best. So you're right. I think a win's a win. You just want to advance. It's not really too indicative of how you look. For betting wise, we got to take a look at that. But just as a team wise, you just want to win and advance. But yeah, I think there was some good and bad both on the Penn State and Boise State side. I think Penn State really ran the ball well, like you said. I wish they would have committed a little bit more to that run game. That's something we've talked about, Case, all season here with Penn State, where they got these 2 talented backs. They have good run blocking linemen this year, but they just sometimes don't commit to it. They try and just get more into the pass-happy role. So I felt like if they really committed to that, they really could have extended that lead even more and really got out there, because then the second half, Aller was getting sacked a little bit. They started to turn up the pressure a little bit, Boise State, who had a really good D-line that we highlighted going into that game. So just some mental notes take away now that you go into the next round with Penn State. But overall, looked pretty good. Got that late touchdown to help put them up over the closing line there and make it a 3-score game. But yeah, Boise State was just a little outmatched. I mean, we kind of knew that going in, the talent level. Jeanty, Penn State had a really good game plan for slowing down Jeanty, really stacking the box, putting a lot of attention on him, which I thought was a really smart game plan and really committed to that. And Boise just kept feeding them. Like they just were really trying to force feed them. I don't know if they were trying to go for the record or what, but it seemed like they had some success throwing the ball. And then they started to open up a little bit more, and they were down 3 scores, and that's what kind of got them back into somewhat of a range in the game there. But yeah, so just a little weird from the Boise State side. The game plan could have been a little better. Penn State, same thing too. Like if they would have stuck to a better game plan. So, got 31-14 win. Overall, Penn State definitely did look the part. So got to give them credit there. And then we'll have a little bit tougher test now going forward if they want to keep going than Boise State and SMU. But got to give flowers to Penn State there for getting it done on New Year's Eve there.
Yeah, and I think they had a chance too to really pull away. It was that we were up 14-0 after that Boise turnover. They had the ball, looked like they were going to go up 21-0, and then there was that weird fumble, that exchange with Aller and Singleton. That was irritating because it really kind of kept Boise in the game. I felt like if they score there, we were on our way to like a blowout, and gave a little bit of momentum to Boise. I think they ended up scoring on that drive also to tighten it up. So just a couple weird things, kind of how things go. But yeah, you definitely, they're not going to be able to hold a lead like that against Notre Dame, I don't think, if they turn the ball over, which traditionally have done a good job of holding on to this year. But definitely a point in the game where I felt like that was kind of Boise's chance, and they did capitalize on it. It wasn't enough to quite win the game. It never felt like they were going to win the game, but they were kind of hanging around there late, I'd say, until mid third quarter or so, until it was kind of felt like it was over. But yeah, nonetheless, Penn State hangs on and gets the win there.
I think one more last point to their case with the turnovers. I think momentum's a real thing once you get in these playoff games, 50-50 split crowds. You don't just have the whole home crowd with you. So I just felt like in that game there, and especially this next game we'll break down at Texas Arizona State, like this momentum could just come in waves, and then it could just overtake you if you're on the wrong side of it, or you could just ride it and get a couple quick scores, or if you get a turnover. Like you said, that game should have been out of hand by that point, but that one fumble by Aller really brought Boise some life and gave them a little confidence, and then they went down to score to kind of keep it within range. So that's just something to keep in mind here. These momentum swings, I feel like, have been really prominent in every playoff game so far.
Yeah, no, I agree. You could tell, and you could feel it with the crowd too. Boise did a heck of a job too, filling the stadium.
Yeah,
their part had a lot of people there, way more than Penn State fans. Honestly, I think it was like 60-40 or 70-30. And I think part of that is it's probably that was Boise's biggest game in school history, and everybody wanted to be a part of it from there. Whereas Penn State just coming off of a home win, a lot of fans, I don't want to say looking ahead, but are certainly, I know now, going down to Miami, that's going to be a sold out building. So I think a little bit of that. So Boise did a good job. And even on that note with Penn State too, that coming off of the SMU win, that's, SMU, that was their Super Bowl. Boise, that was their Super Bowl. So even though I don't think those teams are as talented overall, they don't have quite the rosters as some of these other teams have. I do, I think they had chances. A lot of people, we're not going to be stunned if Penn State dropped one of those games by any means. At least I wouldn't have been. But anyway, enough on them. We'll get to the Notre Dame Penn State game, obviously, here coming up. But another recap: Texas holding off Arizona State, and really the only thriller we've had so far in our 8, I guess, playoff games so far. A lot of blowouts. This one was not. It felt like it could be. Texas was up early. It kind of felt like they were in control most of this game until the second half came around. Arizona State got a big touchdown. I think they got a 2-point conversion, hanging in there. Texas missed 2 late field goals in this game, and Arizona State had a huge chance to win, forced it to overtime. And then they obviously just fall short. I think they scored first in overtime actually as well. And Texas had to convert that 4th and like 13 to force a second. So it's actually insane thinking about how close this was. Arizona State really had a real chance to advance, but they just fall short. My quick take is Arizona State has a lot to be proud of. Obviously, winning the Big 12, picked to finish last, I think, according to most odds, and then almost really advanced to the semifinals. Really could have with that 4th and 13. So heck of a season for them. Texas, I don't even know. I mean, they're like all over the place. A question mark. I think me and you would both agree that we're hoping Texas could pull off an upset versus Ohio State, because if Notre Dame or Penn State or whoever advances there, I think that all of a sudden becomes, where I strongly feel Ohio State's going to win, to all of a sudden I think it's a coin flip. I think any of those 3 teams could beat each other, really. I'm not really that impressed with Texas from, what they could have been. It seemed like midway through the year when they were number 1. They just don't seem like that team. A lot of different flaws. It looked like, their offense was finally getting going, and then I don't know what happened at the second half of the Arizona State game. And then Their defense also was, questionable these last few weeks. So I don't know about Texas, but it was at least a thrilling game.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with all that. Definitely another weird game where I thought the first two drives Texas, I think they scored on 2 plays, like 80 yards, and they had that punt return, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a 51-0 game. Like, look out. And then, then ASU really had a nice – they were moving the ball game, honestly. They just had a couple of 4th downs in Texas territory. I remember twice in the first half at least, and they didn't convert those. And so they were moving the ball, and then the second half – they were really just cashing in, getting some touchdowns or field goals late there. But, yeah, Texas couldn't put them away. And that's a theme. Like, if you let these teams hang around, it could get a little dicey. And Arizona State had plenty of chances to win that game outright, like you said, scoring first in overtime. They had that big targeting call that everyone was talking about, which I was like 50-50. I didn't think it was blatant because he had his head up like he wasn't head down launching at him, but it was close. But if they get that targeting call, they only need like 5-10 yards to get in field goal range. So that was a huge swing there too. So Texas was very lucky to get out of there with a win for sure. Ewers still doesn't look great. Like, I don't know what's going on with him. The offense they couldn't get the run game going, which is something we'll break down the Ohio State game. But if you can't run on Arizona State, who is not a good run defense, how do you think you're going to run against Ohio State? And then you don't want to be one-dimensional when you get up against some of these elite defenses. So Texas is a lot to kind of figure out. Maybe they peaked a little bit like early midseason, and I think they just kind of been on like a slow decline since like halfway through the year. Those Georgia losses were tough. Like, you look like, what's their best win, or like what defense have they really looked good against, So is their defense a little fraudulent too? I mean, I was surprised Arizona State was moving it up and down the field the entire game with their quarterback really showing his legs there, and Scatabo had a really nice game. So yeah, definitely a lot of questions with Texas. I was not too pleased with their performance, but like you said, Arizona State, that was awesome that they got there and really showed well. I think they showed the country. They had a lot of eyeballs on them. I love that Kenny Dillingham as a coach. He's a nice up-and-coming young coach. Just signed an extension with them. He really likes Arizona State. I think he might have played there or worked there before. So he's going to be there a while. So it'll be fun to see Arizona State in that Big 12 spotlight. They definitely will not be picked to be last probably next year going into next year. So huge prop to Arizona State. But, yeah, Texas, a lot of shaky, and kind of shaky against Clemson too, Case. I think we can both agree. So 2 shaky wins, and now you're going up against the best team in the country, Ohio State. Right. Could get a little dicey there.
Well, even moving back from that, I mean, they lost the SEC championship game, right. And then before that, they struggled against A&M. Like I don't know, they didn't look overly impressive. It's been a long time, I think, since Texas has looked very impressive, and the way Ohio State's playing, I don't know. I would be a little worried if I was a Texas fan. I did say it last week, though. I'm still waiting for this huge performance by Texas, so it could not come at a better time than right now for them.
Right, and we'll both be rooting for Texas for sure. If you're on the other side here, for sure. Let's hope.
Yeah. I have a counter to that. If Penn State were to lose, I may root for Ohio State.
That's true. Yeah,
that game is first.
We play first,
we'll so, but anyway, for sure. I think Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State. I think all three. I would, just pick a random name out of a hat. Honestly, I'm not no fear of Texas that I have of Ohio State with PTSD with them. So anyway, speaking of Ohio State, huge win, blowing out Oregon 41-21. In the Rose Bowl. I was completely wrong on this one. I don't know. I had no faith in Ohio State just over the last few weeks, how they ended the regular season, the questions we had even during the year where, we saw all this talent and they just weren't putting it together. Well, it seemed like they just put everything they had together for this one. They were no problem moving the ball against Oregon. And we did see, that being a possibility with how Oregon's defense has played at times. Exhibit 1 being, Penn State just going right down the field on them also throughout the Big Ten championship. I thought they were going to be a little bit better. I at least thought their offense was going to perform, but it really took until the second half before they got anything even going on offense. And honestly, by that point, it felt so over. It was like 31-0. It was like, the game felt over at halftime, which is crazy. And, this type of game, this type of atmosphere, but nothing going for Oregon. Ohio State just blew them out. Offense clicking. It seemed like they were just scoring at will. And then in the second half, right when Oregon, I think, got like 2 possessions together to try to cut it to like 3 possessions or something crazy, Ohio State just went right down the field and scored again, and gave Oregon no hope. So complete beat down here in Pasadena.
Yeah, I was actually really stunned with the Oregon offense. Like, I thought they would have a better showing. I was on Oregon myself too. Like, we were both on them, so it was tough watching that game. But yeah, we kind of knew Oregon's defense wasn't great. I mean, I think Ohio State's offense really overperformed. Like, they were literally scoring. I think they scored in every drive except for one or maybe all of them in the first half. So when you get down that much, it was crazy. But yeah, from the first couple of drives when it was kind of like 7-0 or even 14-0, Oregon just couldn't even get a first down. Like, they made it past midfield, I think, on that last drive of the first half. Like, it was a dominant performance from the Ohio State defense, and at least Oregon could hang their hat on their offense. And when that wasn't clicking, then that's when you saw the 31-0 coming into play. So it was really just a bad day. Dan Lanning said it just wasn't our day today. Took a shot at Ohio State, said it wasn't their day against Michigan. I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, this Ohio State team, if they keep playing like this, I mean, this is why you got the $25, $30 million roster. I mean, these guys are talented, they're elite, and if they play up to that level, you have to play a near perfect game or be really, really sharp to beat them. So it's kind of scary what they're doing on both sides of the ball. I think not a lot of people are talking about Ohio State's defense too, that we'll get into later, but they're playing at a really elite level and shutting down some of these high-powered offenses. And then couple that with this offense becoming so explosive. Like, they were just not this explosive. They're scoring on 40, 50-yard bombs, big run plays, big chunk plays. So
Yeah.
they're a tough team to slow down. I think Oregon just got in the way. I think some of this results, I think, will now really switch up or maybe look to change some of these playoff structures and the seeding and everything, because he kind of felt bad for Oregon, honestly. It's like they're the number 1 team. If they would have like reseeded or would have got a better draw,
Right.
they wouldn't have ran to Ohio State. So it was just a really tough draw for Oregon, who had a great year and then literally just ran to a buzzsaw in a bad game. And those teams that had the buys or the double buys just really came out flat, didn't really start off their games like really great. So that was also something to notice. Some of these teams that now have played the week before, but now you come into this week, some teams are playing their 15th game, 16th game. Like, it's just never seen this before in college football. But yeah, if Ohio State plays like that, there's really no team in the country. Oregon, we thought, was one of them that could maybe compete with them. And you just saw there, they blew them out. That score could have been even more. So a little scary seeing Ohio State get that good.
Yeah, no, they're looking extremely good. And yeah, like you said too, all the teams with buys, they lost every single one of them. I mean, it's who would have thought? You think you have the buy, you have the advantage. Well, here we are with 4 teams left, and none of them have won a conference, and none of them had a buy. So it's just odd how it's kind of all playing out. And we'll see how it moves into next year. You can't just take one year as as the Bible and being completely how it's going to go every year. But for sure, I think there's definitely question marks, and I do think there'll be changes next year. I think it's pretty inevitable just how the media is going, and I think the committee is already kind of talking about reseeding and maybe getting rid of the conference auto, like top 4, like Arizona State and Boise State. They certainly maybe they were good enough to be a top 12 team, but they certainly were not a part of the top 4. There's no doubt. So definitely questions moving forward as far as the structure itself. And then Mr. Paisley, Notre Dame defeating Georgia there on what is it, January 2nd,
Yes.
moving a day back due to the terrorist attack in New Orleans. Notre Dame defeating Georgia 23-10. Kind of a game how we kind of thought it might go, low scoring. It was a perfect storm for Notre Dame. If you ask me as a non-Notre Dame fan, I'd say, well, the way to win this game is just completely rattle the Georgia offense. I didn't have a ton of confidence in Georgia's, with their backup quarterback and this and that, but they did show they were able to move the ball at times for sure. But Notre Dame really did a good job. I mean, keeping them to 10 points, forced those 2 critical turnovers, one right before halftime when Georgia had a chance to at least go down and tied or even kneel it down if they wanted to. Instead, they fumbled. Notre Dame scores. And then also when Georgia was marching down in the Notre Dame territory and then turned the ball over there as well. So huge turnovers created by the Notre Dame defense. They did a heck of a job keeping it low scoring. Offense did enough to just, win the game. And here they are in the semifinal.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta first start with the weird circumstance going on, like, you would never think something like that would be happening, around a college football game in the city and stuff, so, thoughts and prayers to everyone out there that got affected by it. That was terrible what happened, but and yeah, once they finally played the game at 4 p.m., like, a little difference, I thought that was kinda just a little weird shakeup that none of these teams had to go through maybe ever, so that was a crazy thing going into the game. Like you said, the first half was exactly the way we thought. Really low scoring. Field goals were the the only scoring points, and then that strip sack really changed the game. I was actually watching on my phone coming back from something, and they kicked the field goal. I turned it off, and I was like close to my destination. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna. Next thing I know, I get a touchdown alert. I'm like, what? I thought there was only like 20 seconds left. So for all those people that like don't like when teams just knee at the end of the half, that's why you do that. If you're Georgia, I was surprised they went for the pass, and then yeah, it was just a boom, quick strip sack, next
Yeah.
play, touchdown, and that flipped the game right there. I mean, that'll do it. So, we don't apologize for winning around here, no matter how it is. But you're right. Oh, Notre Dame's offense did not have to do much in that game. And then once they got that lead, and then literally got the kickoff return right out of halftime, you go up 17 points with your defense only allowing 3 points and looking really good. They kind of just shut it down, the offense, and was going real run heavy, just trying to chew up some clock, short, safe passes, because they knew they could really rely on that defense, which keeps impressing me week in and week out. Like they're losing guys along the D line in the secondary all year, and they just still are playing at this really high level, both on the outside and stuff in the run. I thought that was the only way we thought Georgia could, really put their pedal to it was in that run game with Notre Dame's D line being a little beat up, and they were really undersized too. If you look at some of the weight of some of those D linemen versus the Georgia offensive linemen, and Notre Dame held up really good. And once they shut that down, they got their blitzes going and really rattled that quarterback making his first start. So I thought the game plan was really good, and I think that's another thing we talk about all the time on this podcast is the coaching. And Notre Dame's coaching at a very elite level with that punting, running on and off, like just little things like that that really killed 4 or 5 more minutes. I'm just not used to that as a Notre Dame fan my whole life, being that good at coaching on both sides of the ball and the head coach and special teams too. I mean, Notre Dame's been doing this all year because I watch every game, but if you're not watching them, they usually throw in a fake punt or do something crazy like that every game, and it's usually something different. It's not something they just do like the same play every time. Fake field goals they've ran before with some crazy stuff. So they really do put a lot into their game plan. So in these big games, like we talked about before we started, Case, like these little details do matter. And I think that's what, really showed in this Georgia Notre Dame game, that Notre Dame was very buttoned up, had a lot of things checked off the list. And, Georgia just wasn't prepared for some of them. This wasn't the Georgia team we've known the last couple of years. You got to be honest. Like, it wasn't an elite team. They lost their quarterback, who wasn't playing that great too. So, like you said, it's a win, but it's not like, oh my God, we beat the 2-time national champion Georgias like they were in the past. But still a very nice win for the Notre Dame program that needed some big wins with their. I think they were 0-10 in New Year's Six bowl games.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it's typically a playoff game, not a bowl game, but they haven't won a bowl game in like a New Year's Six bowl game since like the early 2000s or 1990s. So really turning around. But now they got to turn around quick with extra or less days, I should say, off. So they're more banged up. So this game did take a toll on them a little bit. Gonna be interested to see how they fight back. But overall, nice win. This is how they've been winning all year with defense and the run game. So it was nice to see this still played out in their favor.
Yeah, I agree with those points. I mean, if you do look back, like I don't even know when the last time Notre Dame won, like you said, a New Year's Six game, like one of the major bowl games, and it couldn't have happened at a better time in a playoff setting, a chance to go to the semifinal. So I would say this ranks pretty high, at least in the recent era of college football, the last 20, 25, 30 years, definitely high up on, biggest wins just because of the stage. And, to beat Georgia, we definitely agree. Georgia's not the Georgia team that they were years past, but still an impressive Georgia team. I mean, the SEC champion Georgia, the SEC is complaining about not getting enough teams in. And, here they are with all their teams losing in every bowl game that mattered, except for maybe Lane Kiffin running it up on Duke of all teams. He's the only one that's able to say anything at this point. But anyway, the point is Georgia's still, SEC champion. Notre Dame comes down there, neutral site, and beats them. So definitely a huge win. And yeah, we'll see if the rest matters the day. I mean, Penn State will get 9 days between their game. Notre Dame will only get 7 games. So, we'll see if that has any impact originally it was already a day shorter anyway because Penn State played New Year's Eve. But certainly, weird times. We'll see. I guess it'll be hard to tell if that impacts anything, but at least as far as players being banged up, giving Penn State an extra day or two with, like Carter and some guys being able to maybe rest a couple of days will be an advantage. But we really won't know until we kick off.
Yeah, maybe Lane Kiffin thought they were taking the total scores of all SEC schools in the bowl games and really had to run it up there. But every time we do this podcast now, like every week and a half, another couple SEC teams go down and don't look good. So I think we could both enjoy that. That's been pretty funny how bad the SEC and the talent's just spread out. And these teams are good. So you got to start taking some of these other teams seriously. It's not just the SEC and then everyone else. I mean, this town is good, and there's some really good teams spread out across the country up at the top.
Yeah, the only SEC team left is really a Big 12 team. I mean, at the end of the day, Texas, they've been there 1 year. They don't even have a full roster. I mean, of like SEC, like these guys weren't being like they were recruited from Texas, but they weren't really competing with a lot of the areas that like Alabama and Florida were recruiting anyway. It's just funny. I mean, the SEC should be thankful at this point that Texas scraped by Arizona State to at least give the conference some more revenue for semifinal. But yeah, SEC certainly been down the last couple of seasons. I don't want to say down, but I mean not good. And their style, I mean, their
expectations, that's definitely down for the SEC people. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, from their exactly. That's a good way to put it. They're expecting to win the national championship every year, or have Alabama or LSU or somebody else right there, Georgia. That's completely changed, and I do think NIL and this expanded playoff and the transfer portal is evening out the playing field a little bit, whereas some teams that it takes a little longer to rebuild could all of a sudden try to turn their roster around and as soon as one season, really. I mean, it's kind of a stretch, but they really could. I mean, you could go to the transfer portal right now and say, I need 4 new wide receivers.
Right. Yeah, Nick Saban's not there to bail them out anymore and keep the SEC alive. So
Nick Saban quit. Nick Saban quit right when things started to get a little bit difficult.
All right. Smart man.
Anyway, all right. Well, big win for them. So here we are, semifinals. Crazy already here. A couple more games to go. Texas, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State. Did not think this would be the Final Four. If you asked me a month ago, or really even like 2 weeks ago, I probably would have had most of them wrong. So anyway, might as well kick it off in the Cotton Bowl. Ohio State laying 6 right now. This line has been moving, went down to 5.5. Total sitting at 53.5. Now the line's back up to 6. Going to be an interesting in game, Mr. Paisley. And I think we both agree that Ohio State's going to have the edge on this one with their offense. I think, and based off of how they played against Oregon, I'm not really too concerned. But I'm interested to see what your thoughts here, or how maybe Texas could have any sign of life and what they could maybe do to rattle Ohio State and try to pull off an upset. But right now, I'm definitely leaning Ohio State laying the points.
Yeah. We'll start with the numbers on both games. This game opened up 4.5. I think I was seeing. Quickly shot up to 6.5. The total was 54. I think down to 53 now. So just catching those movements a little bit. I was thinking like if Texas gets to 7, like maybe just a numbers play on that. But then as I dug into it a little bit more, really got into it, kind of leaning more towards the Ohio State side. Just would feel more confident putting my money on Ohio State right now than a questionable Texas team. But I think this number is crazy. Like if they said if you played this as a first round matchup right after the Michigan game, it's probably a pick 'em. So it's moving 6-7 points just based off of 2 games. So where do you fall on that? Do you fall in the recency bias, or do you fall into the long season, metrics and numbers that everyone uses? But yeah, if we start on the Ohio State offense against Texas defense, I mean, I think they're kind of going in different directions. Ohio State now really taking off, really ascending, switching everything that they're doing. They're not a run first team. They're really spreading you out, moving Jeremiah Smith. He's definitely been the focal point, which he should have been all year. He's a really talented freshman receiver. I don't realize too, Case, he's 6'4", I think they said. Like, he's a tall receiver too. Texas is a really good corner, but I think he's only 6 foot or 5'11". So that could be a matchup nightmare with a couple jump balls or stuff like that. But they're getting really creative and getting him the ball, and it seems to be really creating a lot of success for Ohio State. And then, they still have 2 really good running backs in Judkins and Henderson, who are so fresh because it's not one takes all the carries. So they are a tough offense to slow down. Will Howard, I don't like him, but he's playing pretty good. You got to admit that. Having a good 2 games here. It was a little shaky at the end of the year there, especially in the Michigan game. They just weren't really trusting him, and now they're just putting everything on his plate, and he's really delivering. So can he keep up this run? Because we know that the talent's there without all the other positions, but Will Howard, I still have my doubts about. But yeah, this Texas defense, like the metrics look really good. Their numbers look really good. They survived their SEC schedule, but if you look at the SEC schedule and you look back on it, like really not that impressive. But they played some teams that were at the bottom or middle of the SEC, and then the 2 times they stepped up was against Georgia, and didn't look that great overall. The defense showed okay, but I'm just afraid with some of these games, the way they went. Like if you have their doubts about like an SMU and their schedule or an Indiana and how do they look against top tier teams? I kind of feel that with Texas defense. Like they look good against average teams, but then when they step up, or even Arizona State, like I said, moving the ball up and down, Ohio State's a lot better offensively than Arizona State. So if they're going to hang close to 30 on you in the last game, I think Ohio State's going to have no problem moving up. I like their pieces Texas has, but I don't. Some of these rankings have them like number 1, number 2, number 3 in the country defensively. So I think they might get exposed here a little bit. So I'd give a pretty good edge to Ohio State's offense. I think they're going to put up a decent amount of points and stay hot here against Texas defense.
Yeah, I do agree. I will say this is probably the only way that Texas could try to pull off an upset or keep this thing close is their defense being able to slow down Ohio State. We saw Michigan be able to do it. We saw, even against Penn State, Ohio State's offense didn't look impressive. So there's definitely a chance that they could try to rattle, Will Howard and, try to, put maybe a couple guys in the box and maybe make Howard throw the ball, because we do know their run game also could be really explosive. I just don't have enough. I really like Ohio State's defense. So it makes me think if Texas wants any shot in this game, they're going to have to play lights out on defense. They're going to have to play like Michigan did, play like other teams did against them to try to keep Ohio State from scoring. Because if Ohio State is able to, score on like 2 of their first 3 drives, and then, we're getting into halftime and they're at, 20 something points, and, the third quarter comes out. I mean, this thing can, I feel like, get slip away from Texas pretty quickly. So I agree. I think I would lean the Ohio State offense having the advantage, but if Texas, I think, wants any chance, they need to play a near perfect game on defense.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And the one thing I think that Texas could maybe throw a little curveballs, they play a lot of zone. And I think the last 2 games against Tennessee and Oregon was a lot of man, and then you just saw their athletes just beating them in space and beating them down the field. So maybe give a little zone look, make Howard read some stuff, make him be a pocket quarterback, and maybe get a little overthrow and it goes to the safety and get a couple interceptions, some turnovers. Ohio State's offensive line's still not that great, but it didn't really matter in these last 2 games. And I think another point is just how fast they started the last 2 games. So if you could just slow Ohio State down, keep it like a 7-7, 7-3 game. They don't know what it's like to play a close game. The last time they did was Michigan, and we know how that turned out. So they just been on such hot streaks right out the gate where they don't even have to play that hard the rest of the 3 quarters. So really got to come out strong here for Texas if you want a chance here to just keep it close. And then, anything could happen later in the game, or you could definitely cover the number, but they got to start faster.
Yeah, if they could slow the game down, would be in Texas' best interest. I mean, even looking back at the Nebraska-Ohio State game where Nebraska had a late fourth quarter lead, because once again, they really slowed the game down. They prevented Ohio State from really having the ball. And then, when they did, just making Ohio State earn, every yard, making it difficult for them. And that went late into the fourth quarter. Ultimately, Ohio State won. But I feel like that's the type of game Texas wins, because for sure, Texas offense, I think, is going to struggle. I really like Ohio State's defense. I think they're playing really well against the high-powered Oregon offense. I mean, they didn't allow anything in the first half. I don't have the yardage in front of me, but it was abysmal. I mean, Oregon wasn't being able to do anything. Did not look like this Oregon team we saw all year. The Ohio State defense really came to play. And even when in those games where Ohio State struggled in, such as, Nebraska or Michigan or, even Penn State, that was when their defense was still pretty consistent. I mean, they had a couple, gave up a big play here and there, but overall, I mean, it's a scary group, if not the, best defense in the country right now.
Yeah, they're definitely playing good. And they had a chart of how many years each player's been there at Ohio State, like all the starters. And the only one that was like 2 years or less was Caleb Downs, and he's the best safety in the country. And everyone was like 4, 5, 6 years. Like it's a very experienced Ohio State defense, which definitely helps here later in the season. And yeah, I think like you said, like the only way to beat Ohio State is to kind of play keep away and kind of run, slow the game down, keep that offense off the field, which I think honestly Michigan, Penn State, and Notre Dame could do really good, but I don't think Texas's offense can. I mean, that run game just did not get going against Arizona State, which kind of sets up a lot of things. They like to use a lot of play action and misdirection. So if Texas cannot get the run game going, it's lights out. They're not going to be able to move the ball. I think they're going to struggle a ton. Then it's just going to be Ewers trying to play the game of his life and really, trying to win on the outsides over the middle. Isaiah Bond, their receiver's still banged up, so like they don't have their best receiver. Just not a lot of explosiveness on the outside. They really do rely on that run game. They have a good offensive line, but I think Ewers is still banged up. I feel like he's not 100% trying to play through some stuff. But I see the Texas offense struggling mightily here. And I think you're right. I think if they have a chance, they need their defense, Texas, to step up and keep this and grind it out and be a low-scoring game, maybe hold Ohio State to some field goals, not let up those touchdowns. But, yeah, I just think you look at Texas, the way the offense is trending, not looking good. Their defense has kind of been holding them up and winning some of these games later in the season here. And I think you said, I think Ohio State's defense is definitely one of the best in the country. So got to give them a lot of props. They're playing really sound and kind of been good all year, like you said, but no one's been really giving them credit for that. But they really are holding teams to 14 or under, basically. And then if the offense is going to explode like that, it's kind of tough to beat them. So you got to pick one side of the ball here, but I just don't see a lot of success here for Texas offensively.
What would your leans be as far as spread, over, under, and then also just for fun, a final score pick? We could do it for both of these games to close it out.
I'd go a full unit play on Ohio State -6. It's kind of been bouncing, so I'm going to kind of wait maybe a couple more days. If it gets back down to like 5.5, 5, or even if a 4.5 shows again, kind of get one of those dead numbers. But I kind of like Ohio State full unit. I'd say a lean to the under. I like the under 53. Anything above 50 is probably good. A small play, nothing crazy. And the one play I do like, I was researching a little bit, is Texas team total under 20 or 19 or 21, I think it was, right around 3 scores. I really think the Ohio State defense is still going to step up and play really good, and I just don't see a lot of success for this Texas offense. So I see Ohio State scoring a lot, covering the number, but I see Texas really struggling offensively. So let's give it I'd maybe say like a 28 to 10, 13, 2013 game maybe.
Wow. Yeah, so I agree. Most of that, except for really just the final score, I was off. But I do like Ohio State. I'm going to lean at the -6 or really whatever it closes at. I still feel pretty confident. And then I also lean under. Only reason I'm hesitant is because of the Ohio State offense. If they get enough explosive plays, I could see them, putting up, 30, 35 points. And then, Texas doesn't have to do a whole lot to get the 53. But I still lean under. I have my final at 34-16. So kind of just a little bit of a strange score there, but 34-16. I don't know. Maybe Texas doinks another field goal or extra point or something to fall short. But lean Ohio State to cover or not to cover under. I do like them laying whatever it is, 6. Maybe I'll even buy a couple more points. Honestly, that's how confident I am. But that being said, I'm waiting for Texas to put it all together and, have a strong performance really for the first time in, I don't even know, a couple months really to get this team to full potential. We've been saying it about Ohio State. They finally seem to have figured it out now in their last 2 games. Yeah. So maybe we'll be shocked here and Texas will be coming out of the gates hot. Also, quick side note, this is not as important, but there is there's a big winter storm actually affecting this game in Texas. It is played in a dome, so before anyone says this game's inside, but it is impacting travel, teams coming down there. The fans, I know a lot of fans are selling their tickets now. The prices are low. So just kind of a weird, third extra factor to think about. Will that have any impact? Maybe there'll be delays for the teams getting in. I don't know when they're supposed to travel down there, but you don't see winter storms in Dallas very often. So that's my meteorological take here of the game.
I like it. So not just sports here, but I was actually going to mention that too, Case, is my last point. A little Texas advantage. Like you said, maybe a little bit. It's not whole lot, but they should have most of the crowd here. It's in Texas,
Right.
not a lot of travel for the team, so that definitely helps. And their fan base should be showing up a lot, even regardless. But now, like you said, with the weather, a lot of Ohio State fans having trouble. So this could be like an 80-20, maybe like I feel like a true home game for Texas. So just maybe something to keep in mind. We like to lay out all the factors here when you're betting on these football games.
Yeah, good point. All right, well, I think that's a wrap, Hayes. I don't think there's any other games here to go over.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think the people got their fill. We're good. There's nothing else going on.
Notre Dame, Penn State, Orange Bowl, chance to go to the national championship. Mr. Paisley is a Notre Dame fan. For any of those that don't see the Irishman there behind him, the fighting Irish guy on the wall, and myself, a Penn State fan, a Penn State alum, as I have the hat on here. Didn't think we'd be in this situation, if you asked me, a couple weeks ago, or after Notre Dame maybe lost to Northern Illinois, or Penn State, lost to Ohio State again at home. But that's the beauty of the new 12-team playoff. I think both of these teams have done a pretty good job at taking advantage of that, and don't think either of them would be in this situation probably without it. Maybe depending on how the rankings all shaped up, but pretty remarkable the type of season that happened really for both of them. Notre Dame, obviously, the early loss coming back, and then Penn State kind of took advantage of a weaker schedule, but needed to win all the games that they won, and really could only afford the one loss in the regular season, Ohio State, and that's what they were able to do. Kicks off 7:30 in the Orange Bowl. Total, or the spread right now is 1.5 as of Tuesday night. It was shifting. I think it was started at -1, then it went to 2.5 earlier or yesterday. Now it's back to 1.5. So kind of shifting around a point or two. Totals sitting at 44.5. Mr. Paisley, I don't know how we want to do this, but for any listeners, from now to the end of the video, this is just going to be biased talks. I wouldn't agree with anything Jared's about to say, but anyway, curious what your thoughts are, Mr. Paisley, on the game as a whole, and then we could break down, just like we did Ohio State, Texas, with the offense versus the defenses, and get some final thoughts on this one before we head into the Orange Bowl.
Yes, absolutely no bias from either of us here. But like you said, big game. I mean, it can't get any bigger than the championship. This is to go to the national championship. I mean, this is fun. I was really excited when we got this matchup. It's been since 2007, right, Case? Since the last time they played. So
right. I was there.
It's been a while. It's been a while since we've had these hypotheticals about teams going at it. We'll finally get a chance here to settle it on the field here with a spread right around 1.5, like you said, right around a pick 'em. So it's going to be, they're projecting a very close game. It moved up to 2.5, almost got to 3. And then actually during the day today on Tuesday, came back down to 1.5. Total's been steamed way down. It was open 48, I think, and now down to 44. So just keep in mind those moves if you're looking to bet on the game. I think there's definitely some money both sides on Notre Dame and Penn State, but I think just a lot of under money coming in. So just something to keep in mind there. But yeah, I'll start us off here with the Penn State offense going against Notre Dame's defense. I think this is going to be a great matchup, good on good here. Penn State's offense been rolling the last couple weeks, kind of, not really. But the run game has definitely been going. Got a couple receivers that made some nice splash plays down the field against Boise State. Drew Allar's playing good, coming back for another season next year. But this Notre Dame defense is playing very, very elite too. I think they're number one in some metrics or most of them, even outmanned with some of the injuries they have, but they're just super aggressive. I think they match up really good against Penn State's offense, but I'll agree on the same side when Penn State's defense goes up against Notre Dame's offense. But I think it's going to be a defensive battle. Both teams really focus on the defensive end. But I think if you look in that Boise State game in the second half, when they started bringing heat on Drew Allar, I think it kind of laid out a blueprint for Notre Dame that they could use to slow down Penn State. The offensive line looked a little confused. They were having trouble protecting, and Allar took a lot of sacks. I think he took 6 or 7 sacks just in that game alone. So I think you're going to get the same, or if more, talented players on Notre Dame, and the coaching is a lot better. And Notre Dame does do a great job at confusing quarterbacks and trying to give them a lot of different looks, kind of like an NFL style offense where they put a lot of guys up at the line. You don't know who's coming. Some guys back off. So if you don't have a smart quarterback that can make quick decisions and really dissect that, it could be Very tough sledding on the passing side of it, and the corners are really solid. They lost Benjamin Morrison, their best corner, but the guys filling in, they're pretty deep at that position. They play tight, they play aggressive on the outsides. They don't really give you a lot of room to breathe out there. So they really pair that nicely with the pressure they bring. I think the one area you could attack Notre Dame's defense is the run game. But we thought that was going to happen against Indiana and Georgia. We thought that those offenses would have some success running, and Notre Dame shut them both down. So that is going to be the key on this side of the ball, as it's been the last 2 Notre Dame games. Can their run defense hold up and stop the 2 talented backs on Penn State, who are very good? They complement each other well. And can they handle the blitz pickups? I know I forget which one was which, but one of them is really good at picking up the blitzes and one isn't. So it's going to be interesting to see those little chess matches going on. Drew Alar was diving real deep into this game case, and apparently he was making a lot of checks at the line during the Boise State game, and he was moving them to the wrong side every time, and he was not like calling out the blitz pickups really well and sliding the protection. So that's going to be interesting to see. Can they really pick up their blitzes and kind of give Alar a little bit more time to throw the ball? But I think Notre Dame's going to have a nice day on this side of the ball if they could stop the run game. That'll be the big if on this side of the ball. But I think Notre Dame really shuts down Penn State and makes their life difficult with the receivers on the outside from Penn State. I just don't really trust them to really make one-on-one plays against that tight coverage of Notre Dame. And then the big other X factor is Tyler Warren, obviously. He's a really good tight end, very talented. And what was the one game he got shut down in? It was Ohio State. And Notre Dame has very, very good safeties as well, Xavier Watts. And another guy, his name escaped me right now, but they play really good coverage, a free safety, strong safety. They could put both of them, maybe bracket Warren. It seems like when you take away Warren, the whole offense then kind of sputters a little bit and they can't really get on track. So they are very reliant on him. So 2 big keys for Notre Dame. If they could stop the run, stop Warren, I think they could have a really successful day. And Alar doesn't really put the ball in harm's way, not a lot of turnovers, but he does take a lot of sacks. And I think that was definitely noticeable in the Boise State game. So if he's going to take a lot of sacks in this game, there was a ton of 2nd and 16, 3rd and 13s against Boise State that maybe they converted in that game. But you're not going to have that success, I don't think, against this Notre Dame defense and the way they play. So I think Andy Kolnick, the offensive coordinator, has to stay patient with the run game if you're a Penn State fan. But he has not shown to do that. So that's what I'm going to be really interested to look for on this side of the ball. But if Penn State gets their run game going, getting to some 2nd and 3rd manageables, not getting sacked and getting taken out of average distances, then you could see some success. But if not, I think it's going to be a really long day, kind of like Georgia and Indiana had, where they just really had trouble moving the ball consistently on this Notre Dame defense.
Yeah. A lot to unpack there. I agree. I think both of these teams are going to play very well defensively. As you said, I like both defensive matchups. I think Penn State will struggle mightily here on offense. And I do think, though, like you said, the way that they could potentially break through is not going to be through the air. I mean, I'll just say, Penn State has 0 wide receivers. They're all, they're all average. They're all fine. They don't have a Jahan Dotson on their team. They don't have a KJ Hamler on their team. They don't have anybody even like that. And Allen Robinson from years past, it seems like every year they always did. Now they don't. We're having to rely on a quarterback. Strong arm, really like Drew Alar, definitely the best Penn State quarterback of my lifetime that's been playing there for sure. And I do like Tyler Warren. So there's some playmakers on offense. But if they're going to have, chances to score and put up yards in this game, it is going to be on the ground. It's going to have to be Katron Allen and Nick Singleton and getting them going either on the ground or quick screens or, different check downs, or even look for Drew Aller to take off a little bit. I mean, he showed that he's done it. He did it against Ohio State a little bit on a couple big 3rd downs. So something to look for if you're Notre Dame. And then just a couple things too with the sacks and Boise game. I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, Boise leads the country in sacks. I think that was kind of expected for them to bring the pressure a few times. I think he definitely took way too many. I mean, I was screaming at my TV to throw the ball, but at the end of the day, I'm not extremely concerned about it. He took, I think, 13 sacks during the whole regular season. So just about 1 a game wasn't a huge factor offensive line did a pretty good job, I think, overall. Now they haven't played a team like with Notre Dame's caliber on defense, except for really Ohio State. But not overly concerned about that. But yeah, I am worried about the pass game. I think Notre Dame's going to have a huge advantage. I mean, if they, lock down Tyler Warren and, they like to play a lot of man. I was reading, I think it was 45% or half of their defensive set is all man. I mean, that's going to, I certainly would lean Notre Dame. If we can't get open against, Bowling Green and Illinois and some of these teams, they're not going to have a lot of success on Notre Dame's defense. Maybe you get one or two, big plays. One thing Aller's done a heck of a job this year versus last year is they've been taking a lot more shots downfield. And although they haven't been completing a ton of them, if you complete one or two a game, I mean, that could be the difference in a game like this. Could they get a deep shot to somebody, or, maybe Tyler Warren will make a big play or something like this. I do think, Kotelnicki is going to have to be, a little bit unique in this one. Whereas I think SMU and Boise, he was kind of overcomplicating it. We had a couple trick plays where you didn't need to, just hand the ball off. So you're kind of shooting yourselves on the foot. Why did Penn State do that? They're doing these dumb plays. Completely agree. I think, though, he actually has an advantage on this one where I think you are going to need to do some of that. I don't think you're going to have to, you're not just going to be able to, drop Aller back and expect to, a 10, 15-yard gain. And I don't think you could just stand there and hand the ball off right at the middle. So I do think, some of that creativity will come into play on this one. I think this would be the game where I'd be like, all right, you might as well use it. I mean, a good example, like USC, when they were struggling on offense, they did that play where you have Warren snap it as a center, and, the receivers looked like they were blocking a screen, and then you kind of just ran down the middle and scored a touchdown. I mean, interesting play. You don't see that often, but that's like something you could look for to try to find different ways and getting things going downfield. But no, I agree. I think the Notre defense has an advantage here, just as I will say I think the Penn State defense will have an advantage also on Notre Dame's offense. But yeah, I agree with most of your points as a whole. I think it's going to be low scoring. I like the under, no doubt about it, unless something crazy happens here. But yeah, going to be a slow game, similar to Georgia. Look for a turnover. I mean, for Notre Dame, they've done a good job at that and all these critical points. I mean, they didn't, like you said, do a whole lot on offense to beat Georgia, but it was really that strip sack, that special teams touchdown, and like bang, the game was over. I mean, I remember going into halftime, I felt like this game was over, even though it was only a 10-point game or whatever it was. I was just like, man, I don't think Georgia is showing anything to be able to go down and get back into this game. So Penn State needs to protect the ball. If they do what they did against Boise and have that 50-yard fumble, or Aller makes a couple crucial mistakes and you just give Notre Dame points, I think it's going to be a long day for Penn State. I think they're going to have to protect the ball. Not saying they're going to have to score here a ton of points to win it, but they got to do enough to move the ball, pin Notre Dame deep. I think it's going to be a field position game. Look for those run games really on both sides for sure. And I think that's kind of going to be the key to who's going to have the advantage. But turnovers being really the highlight of this. If Penn State can protect the ball, I think they'll be in decent shape.
Yeah, I think it's a good last point on this topic is the turnover battle. I think Notre Dame's second or third in the country in creating turnovers. So Penn State will have to play clean and not give the Notre Dame offense short fields and vice versa on the other side that we'll get to in a little bit here. And then just last point, I also read something, Case, I don't know how you feel about a Penn State fan with this, but James Franklin apparently has some fourth down calls that he has. He tells them when to be aggressive on third down if they want to go for it, and then also on fourth down. I wasn't sure if he was going full Andy Kotelnicki on that, if he was fully controlling the offense, but it seems like big game James, who likes to get a little conservative sometimes in these big spotlight moments, has a little bit of a hand on the offensive side. Not sure if you saw that, how that makes you feel.
I actually didn't see that. Doesn't surprise me. I mean, I don't know, Franklin in these situations. The one thing I will say is it's a big game now, but if Penn State were to pull off this win, it will not be a big game for the national media for James Franklin until you beat Ohio State or something. But yeah, I don't know. Franklin, I mean, I'm not sure that 4th and 1 they went for it against SMU on their own 19-yard line. I mean, that was an interesting move by
doing that this game, yeah.
By Franklin. Yeah, you do that, you're going to lose. I mean, there was also that 3rd and 3 against, I think it was Boise, where they had that Aller I don't know, took the snap or something, or they had Aller lined up as a receiver. They had Warren taking the snap, and then they dished it to Aller, and then he threw it back to Warren, and like nobody was there, and it's like I don't even know what that was at all. Should have just ran the ball. I mean, if they just ran the ball up the middle, I'd feel pretty confident he would have got it. But I don't know. You get in those situations. Certainly do not trust James Franklin in these situations. I mean, he's given me no reason to ever trust him in this situation, but I don't know. I said the same thing about Jim Harbaugh until they finally beat Ohio State once, and then they win the Big Ten twice, and they win a national championship. So that would be a best case scenario. But yeah, zero faith really in James Franklin here. I would. Not sure how I feel about
it. I like it, and I like hearing that. But yeah, I mean, this will be a different test than what they faced the first 2 rounds for sure. But Notre Dame did get beat up in that Georgia game. Definitely a physical toll, less rest, so definitely some more advantage. And then just quickly on the other side of the ball, because I think it's pretty similar. But the Notre Dame offense, same as Penn State, they want to run the ball first. They're going to be very physical up front. They don't really have a lot of receivers on the outside too. Also similar to Penn State. They have a nice tight end that they like to use, Mitchell Evans, that could have a nice big game here. But yeah, I don't see a lot of advantages for Notre Dame on this side of the ball too. It's going to be very grinded out, kind of like Georgia. If you get your field position, take your chances there. But are these teams really going to put together long drives of 70, 80 yards and finish them off with touchdowns? Penn State is really good in the red zone too. They really force a lot of field goals, the teams that they played against. So Abdul Carter will be a huge injury, I think, in case we could both agree on that. And Notre Dame has some injuries with Jeremiah Love, one of the best running backs in the country. He's going to give it a go, but he's not 100%. I don't even know if he's going to play that much. So not having that dynamic, he's a big play kind of guy, could really hit a 98-yard run like he did in that Indiana game and kind of get you out of those slumps when you need a big play. So that's going to be tough for Notre Dame. But then Carter's going to be interesting to look at. I was hearing a little joint sprain or something in the shoulder, so nothing like Pecker. Absolute tear, but he's going to try and give it a go. The D end is kind of like an interesting position because you kind of need, every position needs their whole body, but you've seen like Bosa kind of in the NFL a couple times try and give it a go with something, and it's just like he comes off the field. So he's going to be interesting because that's what kind of also opened up Boise State to move the ball a little bit was when Carter went out, and then they didn't really have that. They kind of feed off of him, and all the direction goes on him, so those other rushers could really free up on the D line there and get after the quarterback. So his status is huge. I think Jeremiah Love's status, I think we know that's going to really hinder Notre Dame's offensive rushing output, but I'm going to be looking at Abdul Carter here. Franklin doesn't give a lot away in the injury report, so you're not going to see a ton. I was trying to read up on that. He's notorious for that. So it's going to be interesting to see him and see how much he could play. I think Penn State's defense is solid all around. I like Tom Allen as a D coordinator. I think if you remove that Oregon game, they've been really solid all year and really keeping the scoring down on that side of the ball. They have a couple injuries too. The safety got banged up a little bit. I was surprised how Boise banged up Penn State a little bit too. I mean, it's just a physical toll too, like we said, playing 14, 15 games with some of these college athletes that aren't used to playing this much.
Right.
So both teams are definitely banged up going into it, but I think Notre Dame's going to struggle at least to get their run game going, but I'm more confident they'll stay patient with it. They really will try and wear on you. I think that's when they opened up some nice runs against Georgia in the second half, when they just keep wearing on you and just keep running. I think Leonard's going to have a huge day. If you're looking for player props, we can't bet them in Pennsylvania, but I like some of the Penn State receivers, maybe hit a deep shot one of those times. And I also like Leonard to get he's going to be running a ton, I think, with Jeremiah Love out. And they're just going to use him until the wheels fall off here on the end of the season. So I think you're going to see a lot of quarterback run. Penn State was good against quarterback runs during the season, but Leonard's a different beast, so they haven't really seen a quarterback that's this dual threat with a run game that's this potent. So I think both sides of the ball case are going to be very similar. Not a lot of downfield passing, big splash plays. Going to be trying to get those run games going, maybe finding a little success, and then these turnovers and field position are going to be the key here. And whoever just doesn't make the big mistakes, whoever makes the least amount of mistakes is probably going to come out on top here.
Yeah, I agree with everything there. I think it's going to come down to mistakes, and I think if Penn State could force a couple big mistakes, I think it'd be the same thing as if Notre Dame does what they do best and force turnovers, could tilt the needle to Penn State if they're able to do that. But yeah, same X factor as well with Penn State is with Notre Dame's offense is Riley Leonard's ability to run, and I think that's going to be something we'll see how many guys Penn State tries to put in the box if Jeremiah Love or whoever's, at tailback, what type of, RPOs are they going to be running? Could that maybe open up something in the pass game if Penn State's creeping up a little bit? I mean, we did see Boise kind of do that a couple of times just because they had, 8 guys in the box there to try to stop Jeanty. So look for that. A couple big plays, could be the difference in this game. And then, like you said, Abdul Carter is really the main focus on the defense. I mean, without him, my confidence goes from like 9 out of 10 to like 7 out of 10. Like I feel good, but he is really just kind of the spark on the defense. It feels like when he's in, Notre Dame's going to be paying more attention to him, might open up more around them. So I think that'll be big. It does seem like he's going to be a go based off of his Star Wars tweets that he's been putting out this week. So I'm assuming that means he's playing, but I don't know. There's been no announcement. He left the Boise game and didn't return. So I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, hopefully they all play. We definitely want an evenly fair matchup, which I think we're going to get one. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. What's your score prediction, Paisley? I think you'll have Notre Dame winning, and I think I'll have Penn State winning. But I just want to know what the final score will be.
Yeah, it probably won't be a shock to everybody out there. And then just last point, the special teams. I think in these low scoring games, kind of like NFL like, because these are where these totals are set, like in the mid 40s. Special teams are going to play a role, so just watch out for that. Both punting and kicking, fake punts, fake field goals and stuff, those little details we talked about when we broke this game down to start. So Notre Dame's kicker was really banged up during the year. Their kicking game was awful, but now he seems fully healthy and he's hitting some field goals. So got to go at every little detail here when you're breaking down these games. But final score thought case, I'm going to go, like a little like weird, like NFL type, like maybe like 18-15 or like 17-14. Yeah. I think it's honestly, I think Notre Dame wins by a field goal. I'd be shocked if either team, especially Notre Dame, won by 7+ or double digits. I think it's going to be a nail biter to the end, and definitely getting the heart rates up for us too and all the other fans out there. But I got Notre Dame winning a close one here, doing enough, maybe getting a late sack like they did against Georgia to kind of seal it off, and then take the win by 2 to 3 points.
Well, I have something similar. I have a 23-17 final score. In this one, I have Penn State getting a late turnover to get some points on the board late in the fourth quarter to get a big win. Maybe we'll have a missed extra point or something. Not sure how we get to 23 exactly. Maybe a couple field goals, maybe 3 or 4 field goals. I don't know. But yeah, I think it'll be low scoring. That's still under. I think that's a total of 40. So the total is 44.5. But I don't know. With the way we're talking, I just have now this weird feeling that we're just going to have, 2 just offensive days. Both teams will put up 500 yards and like 25, 30 points each is probably what's going to end up happening now. But I guess we'll have to wait and find out.
It's a low total for college football. Like if you've been betting on this all year, I'd say an average total is maybe a high 40 or like a low 50. So this is a good like touchdown or 6 points lower than what normal college football games are. So they really are putting a lot on these defense and putting a lot of trust in them. So sometimes like you have the right side, but then it's just so low where you're right. You get like a 24-21 game. That's not high scoring by any means, but it just squeaks over the total. So make sure you're getting the right number. I think anything 44 is a key in the NFL. So don't put anything under 43, I would say. Try and get the 44. If 45, 46 are kind of dead numbers. But, I think it's going to be under 2, but it's just such a low total. I also looked to the first half under 2. I picked that in the Georgia game, Notre Dame, Georgia, and I think I'm going to play it again here with Penn State just in case you have some late game like weird scoring so you could like chop it up and do a unit on the full game, half a unit on the halftime total or something like that. But yeah, I think we both really like the total and then taking our teams on the spread.
Yep, it's no better way to end the season, Mr. Paisley, than one of our teams going to the national championship. Still really surprised. I don't know if you're as surprised as I am, but pretty.
If you would have told me after NIU that this team was going to be one game away from the championship, I would have said everything I could to tell you that was not going to happen.
Yeah. So game by game, that's why we play them, and no better setting than the Orange Bowl in Miami. The last time Penn State was there was actually 2006, so it's been a while even for them for Big Ten. They was when they beat Florida State actually, and it's a triple overtime game. 19 years ago. So Florida State will not be in the game this year for how their season went. But
that is something to talk about, yeah.
I guess that's pretty much it. We're going to do one more of these to our great listeners out there, previewing the national championship. And we were going to do it anyway, but cannot pass up the opportunity of either Mr. Paisley or myself. One of our teams will be playing most likely Ohio State or Texas in the national championship. So that January 20th, big day. We have a presidential inauguration at noon, and then national title at 7:30 or 8 or whatever time it is. So gonna be a busy day. But any final thoughts, Mr. Paisley, before the matchup?
Yeah, no, I just can't believe we're here. It's been so long. I'm definitely very nervous going into this game about the result, but I think once the dust settles, we'll both be feeling good. We'll both be drinking heavily probably, and hopefully have a good time that night. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, but gonna be rooting on Notre Dame pretty hard here. Hopefully they get it done here, but it's gonna be a close one. It's gonna be a nail biter probably.
Well, I'm not going to be wishing you any luck, so I'm not going to say good luck or anything. I'm hoping Penn State could get it done. I have not a lot of faith in big game James, but Paisley, you just have to get lucky one time to change history. Notre Dame, Penn State coming up, a lot on the line.